Assassin's Creed Shadows has been out for just over a year now, and the game has changed pretty massively since it first released. From huge parkour updates, a brand new weapon type, new abilities, new kill animations, and even a free DLC, the game is nothing like it was back in March 2025, so this review is all about the game as it stands right now. Is Assassin's Creed Shadows worth playing in 2026? Let's just jump straight on in. Now, I will keep this review pretty much spoiler-free, but the premise of Shadows is this. The game opens up with Yasuke, currently a slave and spectacle for Portuguese traders, meeting Oda Nobunaga, who takes a shine to him and brings him into his service. 6 months later, we're best friends, a samurai, and described as his one-man army on our way to attack the Iga region of Japan. We then pan to Naoi, with Iga being her home, where during this attack her father gives her a hidden blade and tasks her with finding a mysterious item behind a door with the Hidden One symbol. Eventually, Yasuke and Naoi meet, become friends, and task themselves with defeating the mysterious group that wronged them both, and I have to say, the prologue is genuinely one of the best in the series. It's perfectly timed, sets up the story, lets us connect with the characters, and showcases almost every aspect of the gameplay without feeling like a tutorial. Having Yasuke enter first is the right chronological choice, although it might give you the impression he's the main character, when Naoi actually gets slightly more of the game. As protagonists, they complement each other well. Naoi is headstrong, idealistic, angry, constantly thinking of revenge, with others trying to shape her moral compass. Yasuke is solemn, stoic, kind, always trying to do the right thing, with that pain behind the eyes kind of vibe. I'd actually say that he's the stronger character, and as a real historical figure, although not much is known about him, Ubisoft portrayed him well. Many argue he should have been a side character, and I get that, but I'm glad he's included as it adds the perspective of being an outsider in Japan. They're not iconic like other characters, but they're likeable enough and their personalities suit a world that's essentially out to get them. One thing I have to praise is the historical setting itself. Shadows makes the Sengoku era Japan feel properly lived in, not just visually but in how people act. The bows, the ceremonies, the way characters speak to someone above below them constantly reinforce the world. A few side characters do stand out, Jinjiro, Hattori Hanzo, Oda Nobunaga, Fujibayashi Nagato, but aside those, only a handful leave a lasting impression, most just kind of move the plot along without much impact. The story covers themes of family, loyalty, and honour during a turbulent time in Japanese history, with the Templar conflict underneath. It's a solid base, but it's around the midpoint that things start to head downhill. Like most AC games, you're given a list of targets, the Shinbakafu, essentially this game's Templars, each tied to a story arc. Most of them are uninteresting, with only 1 or 2 standing out, but that's not even really the biggest issue. The problem is that because you can pick and choose who to go after next, the game doesn't have a clear narrative line. Everything feels disjointed and it lessens the impact. Assassinating one character doesn't feel different to assassinating another, and this issue is recurrent in many of the AC RPGs. Naoi and Yasuke also have their own individual story quests. These, the Kurikiji and Kata, offer flashbacks and are probably the strongest part of the story, aiding character development, shaping the world, and helping the overall narrative. I think what may disappoint some is that Shadows has very little mention of the Hidden Ones or the Assassins, and not a single mention of Pieces of Eden, the Isu, or the First Civilization. There are teases, and the Claws of Awaji DLC explores it a bit more, but it's nothing like the early titles. Yasuke is actually the one dealing with the Templars via his side content, which many people do dislike. Another thing Shadows is missing, which is arguably an even bigger shame, is memory corridors. These were a standout piece of Origins, removed from Odyssey, brought back in Valhalla and Mirage, and now they're just gone again. They humanised whoever you killed and gave us some of the best dialogue in the game, which is part of why the Shinbakafu are just so forgettable. The ending in Shadows also isn't the end, it comes later in the Claws of Awaji, but the main narrative ending falls a little flat, and even the DLC feels a bit unfinished. And this is a shame, because Ubisoft has confirmed that Assassin's Creed Shadows will not receive a second major expansion, the only AC RPG game this has happened to, and instead the developers are focusing on smaller free updates throughout 2026. Now, in terms of the modern day storyline, this is the worst in the series so far, in that it simply just doesn't exist. These short missions are optional, you don't have to do them at all, and you're not playing as an actual person, you're just a faceless mass. It's essentially a teaser for the Animus Hub, and likely something we'll see more of in future AC games. I will say though, the cutscenes are pretty mixed. There are clear differences between which used motion capture and which didn't. The non-mocap facial animations are rough, but for the main story scenes you can tell they took their time with this, especially compared to Odyssey, Valhalla and Mirage. Dialogue options in Shadows are also far more integrated than previous games. They actually affect the interactions you'll have. I also played Shadows in the native languages, so Japanese characters speak Japanese, Portuguese characters speaking Portuguese, and the voice acting is superb. Not only have I seen some of the English voice actors, which didn't impress me, but playing it this way helps envelop you in the world. Combined with the stronger cutscenes, there are some genuinely emotional and epic moments. Overall, Shadow's story is mixed. The prologue is one of the best in the series, the setting feels authentic and grounded, the leads are likeable, and the cutscenes are very hit and miss, but the story feels disjointed, the ending is underwhelming, and we're missing some classic Assassin's Creed themes. I reckon that it's better than Odyssey, worse than Origins, and on par with Valhalla's. One of the strongest positives is the setting, which leads us very nicely into our world. But before we move on, today's video is sponsored by Where Winds Meet. If you haven't heard of it, it's a massive martial arts open world game set in ancient China, where you can explore huge landscapes, climb anything, glide across rooftops, and fight with different weapon styles. And it's completely free to play with no aspect of pay to win at all. The Liangzhou version is now available, bringing the game's first full snowy region, with new cities, cup-shaped layouts, wine-stream pathways, and murals recreated with the Donghuang Academy. You also get two versions of the main city, the peaceful Liangzhou and then the shattered Liangzhou, showing the aftermath when everything collapses. The update adds 5 new story quests, covering a general's inner conflict, a governor's mysterious death, and everyday people searching for a home. For combat fans, there are 3 new world bosses plus 2 campaign challenges, all designed so the music, environment, and story tie directly into the mechanics. One of the highlights is the Moon-Gazing Maiden, a super challenging boss who attacks relentlessly, and to take her on you could use the new Heng Blade, a straight saber with fast attacks, cinematic parries, and Tang Dynasty inspired design. And on top of that, there's a murder mystery campaign, a Chimera boss born from political corruption, the new Raging Tides faction, and the unpredictable Goosey Slide skill that can randomly auto-win a Guardian fight. The Liangzhou update is live right now, new snowy region, new bosses, new stories, new weapon, and it's all completely free. Where Winds Meet is available on PC, PS5 and mobile, so check it out using the link in my description. Back to the video. Now, it's widely agreed that Japan had been the most requested Assassin's Creed setting for years, so it had a lot to prove, and personally I think it delivers. To start, the game is visually stunning. The level of detail is staggering, the colours are vivid, the reflections, lighting and shadows look incredible, even on my mid-spec PC. It's also a decent sized map, similar to the scope of Origins, but it's not just big, it's super dense too. Japan is around 75% mountainous, and the game reflects that, with forests, cliffs, narrow paths, rocky edges, and tight valleys shaping how you move. You're constantly weaving through terrain rather than sprinting in a straight line, which makes exploration feel different from the other Assassin's Creed RPGs. And the Pathfinder system is something you're going to need. Because Japan is so dense, even if your object is only 200 meters away, it's often quicker to just follow the Pathfinder. The forests are often too packed to move through, or the mountains too steep, forcing you to slide back down, which can be rather frustrating. One thing I do appreciate is just how much effort has gone into creating a historically accurate world. The scale of the buildings, cities and towns feels realistic, the temples and the regions all feel very different. We've got huge packed cities like Kyoto, massive castles and Tenshus, small villages, bandit hideaways, the huge Lake Biwa, or the paths leading you through the forests. Whilst Odyssey's and Valhalla's world can feel very copy and paste, in Shadows no two locations feel the same. Another thing is that the weather system is awesome. Sometimes you'll have glorious sunshine creating shadows and sunsets, and other times storms filled with rain and lightning, but on top of that we also have season changes too, meaning the world goes through 4 seasons every couple of hours, so snow in winter, flowers in spring, golden leaves in autumn, etc, etc. These aren't just visual changes either. If it snows, you'll actually have to trudge through it, ponds will freeze over, and if it's raining, it actually aids your stealth as you won't be heard so easily. This is also enhanced by wildlife scattered everywhere. Dogs and cats you can pet, rabbits, birds, foxes, etc, although you can't actually kill them in Shadows, which is an interesting choice. We also have dynamic props too, meaning lots of things can break. You can slice through bamboo, break crates, throw enemies into objects. It's just more reasons as to why this world is so vivid. There are some rough edges. Riding your horse can be awkward because the world is so packed with trees and rocks, and while there are plenty of sync points, a surprising number are on top of heavily guarded castles. It makes sense, the highest point is the castle roof, but when half of them require you to break into a fortress just to unlock a fast travel point, it can get a little annoying. Overall, it's a world for me that is almost as good as Origins, and is definitely one of the best in the whole series. But what is the exploration actually like? Well, to start, there is a hell of a lot out there. There isn't as much as Odyssey or Valhalla, which is a good thing. One of my biggest criticisms of those games is the mindless tick boxing of all the side content, but with Shadows, everything feels much more precise. We have the usual castles or tenshus, killing certain targets within them to access loot, with each location having a specific reward. There are Kofun tombs, intricate puzzle-based areas with again a nice reward at the end, some forcing you to swap between characters depending on whether there's a heavy door to open or a climbing challenge ahead. This applies to the new Paths of Secrets too, offering fun parkour challenges for Naoi, getting to use her grappling hook to its full capability. But the biggest part of exploration isn't the structured activities, it's the world events, side character narratives, and the huge number of assassination targets scattered across Japan. You'll come across world events constantly, and they are surprisingly varied. Some funny, some strange, some pulled from Japanese folklore or pop culture. I wouldn't say they're anything too amazing, but a few have stuck with me. Then there are the side character missions. These are usually tied to a specific region and can range from well-written personal stories involving people from Naoi or Yasuke's past to more straightforward help this person type quests. The objectives are often similar: find an item, fight someone, escort something, but the difference in writing makes them worthwhile, and for the most part they're pretty decent. But then you've got the assassination targets, which is the majority of the side content. There are literally hundreds to find and take out: banished shinobi, corrupt political families, pirates, legendary warriors, all grouped into different trees that you can complete. Some encounters are unique and challenging, others pretty repetitive, but stumbling across them is always fun. Completing these assassination targets and trees gives you plenty of XP and rewards, but doing them back to back can sometimes feel a bit like a tick boxing exercise. Below all that, there's another layer of smaller activities: temples where you search for lost pages, timing-based minigames, horseback archery for Yasuke, sumi-e paintings where you sneak up on animals, and shrines to pray at. None are huge features, but they're a nice change of pace and they do help break up the bigger activities. But what makes Shadows feel different is how finding these challenges isn't so shoved in your face. Our map isn't filled with icons, it's much more natural. You simply explore a new region, and icons only appear when you're close. It just means that when you're arriving into a new area, you're not feeling completely overwhelmed. Even finding your next objective isn't so obvious either. Whilst you're given a general idea where your next target might be, for a simpler steer you can use the brand new scout system, scanning an area where you think your target might be located. It's a nice change, adding depth and an actual thought process rather than just simply running from one location to the next. Your scouts can be replenished at the changing of the season or at your Kakurega, small safe houses where you can restock, access your stash, and accept contracts. They also act as fast travel points, and finding new ones help the world feel connected, like you're slowly building a network across Japan. Now that all sounds pretty great, but there are a few quirks too. Looting can feel endless, with weapons, gear, resources, trinkets, and tool refills all glowing the same colour. It feels like you're missing out if you don't grab everything, and different colours or icons would have helped with this a lot. Plus, because the world is naturally dense, it can feel restrictive, and attempting to run through forests or over mountains can be a bit painful. I'd add too, whilst the castles are different in design, you always tackle them in the same way. Go in, kill the Daishu enemies, loot the box, the objectives are the same, so it can get repetitive. This applies to the side content, especially Naoi and Yasuke's Kurikiji and Kata. Early on, these offer cool flashbacks, but over time they disappear, leading you to complete the same button timing objectives. It's a shame because it feels like the energy behind these side pieces fell off around the midpoint. But these are basically the only negatives I can think of when it comes to exploration. Not only is the content you'll come across decent enough, if sometimes repetitive, but the way you actually locate it is pretty game-changing, constantly surprising you and keeping you invested. Okay, so now we're moving on to what the gameplay is actually like, and this is where all of those updates over the past year have come into play. To start, Shadows isn't just the most tactical and variety-filled combat system out of the 4 RPG games, it's also the most difficult and skill-driven. Naoi fights as both Naoi and Yasuke, each with their own very different style, but their foundation is the same. Light attacks, heavy attacks, charge versions of both, dodges, parries, blocks, and weapon-specific abilities that unlock as you progress. Naoi is all about speed, dodging and grinding the enemy down, living up to her character as a lightweight acrobatic shinobi. She's got a katana as a solid midway option, her tanto is quick hitting, whilst the kusarigama gives her reach and crowd control. And then Yasuke has his own heavy-handed spin on things. His longer katana is the perfect all-rounder, the naginata is crowd control focused, and his kanabo is a slower, heavier weapon ideal for parry-based fighting. And the thing is, combat is already enjoyable before you even start unlocking abilities. The switchable characters and core weapon variety alone gives you more than enough to work with, and when you add Naoi's acrobatic specials, Yasuke's brutal ones, and some great kill animations, it's a super fun experience. I've also got to mention Yasuke's ranged options too. His bow and rifle add a nice dimension, and whilst they're nothing to write home about, they give him flexibility at a distance and help set him apart from Naoi, who only has set throwing knives. The AI in Shadows is also pretty decent. In other AC games, enemies tended to run up to you one at a time, but here they surround you and attack together. You've got to constantly read the situation, parry when you can, dodge when you can't, and attack when you create openings. In previous RPG titles, combat became easy once you out-leveled enemies, whereas Shadows is the opposite. It's actually built around precision and reacting properly. You'll be fighting someone and they'll come at you with a string of attacks, 2, 3, 4, 5 hits in a row. You need to parry or dodge each one, and then it's your turn. It's the first Assassin's Creed RPG where combat genuinely feels like a duel, measured, tactical, and incredibly satisfying when you do get it right. There is also an armor breaking system. You won't damage an enemy until you've taken off their armor, adding extra challenge and satisfaction. Enemy variety keeps things interesting. Grunts, captains, giants, callers, archers, gunners, ronin who stalk you across the map, and more. The boss battles deserve a shout out too, especially in the Claws of Awaji DLC. Some of those fights are absolutely nuts, and they're easily the most difficult encounters the series has ever had, actually making it feel more like a Souls-type game than Assassin's Creed. Talking of the Claws of Awaji, this is where things became a lot more interesting. Not only did Shadows introduce new abilities and kill animations, but it also introduced the best weapon in the game, Naoi's bowstaff. Not only is this incredibly fun to use, but it also brought posture stances with it, low, medium or high, adding variation in how you deal with enemies. Switching stances mid-fight to knock an enemy down or target their head feel great, but it's a shame in some sense as it makes you wish that every weapon also had a stance system attached to it. We haven't mentioned progression yet, which is pretty decent. It's relatively simple. Unlike the massive skill tree in Valhalla, each level up and ability point genuinely makes you feel stronger. Beyond special attacks and weapon upgrades, Naoi and Yasuke get passive perks like stamina recovery, posture damage, parry window, stealth efficiency, and more. Even without equipping a single active ability, you feel yourself growing more capable over time. This applies to weapons too. They're normally stronger than the ones you found before, and each comes with unique perks, some much stronger than others, helping you create builds depending on the scenario. So when you put this all together, the weapon variety, duel-like pacing, aggressive AI, progression, bosses, stances, abilities and kill animations, Shadows easily delivers the best combat in the entire series. It's layered, challenging, and most importantly, it's fun. It's the kind of combat system you can spend hours in without ever getting tired of it. Now, just to kick things off, Yasuke isn't going to be mentioned in this section. The only stealth capabilities he has is crawling, his bow, and he can assassinate by walking up to enemies and attacking them before they realise, but that's about it. Let's start with Naoi's tools, and we have a decent amount of them. Your kunai is likely going to be the tool you'll use the most, able to kill most enemies in a single shot from a decent range, but we also have smoke bombs, doing what you'd expect, shuriken, which won't kill anyone outright but can take out objects that might reveal you, and a bell to distract or lure enemies. Where stealth really shines though is in the passive mechanics and how the world reacts to you. There's a full light and dark system in Shadows, literally living up to its name, where you can use darkness to aid your stealth. If it's pitch black, you can sneak around with next to no interruptions, but if there's a lantern in the distance, take that out so enemies can't see you. Shadows also tracks how visible and noisy you are, so sprinting across a loud rooftop or clattering over wooden floors will absolutely get attention. Now, we've had a crouch button in Assassin's Creed since Unity, but Shadows is the first game to introduce crawling, and it's really worth it. Different lengths of grass mean you might be crouch walking one moment and then have to drop to the floor to remain hidden. It really helps Naoi feel like a proper stealth-focused shinobi. And on top of that, the environment itself supports stealth too. You can hide in boxes and assassinate from them, crawl through ponds using a reed to breathe, assassinate through shoji doors, and most large buildings have multiple infiltration routes, roof hatches, crawl spaces, underfloor gaps, letting you approach however you'd like. The classic double assassination is back too. The last time we saw it this cleanly was in Syndicate, and the bow staff adds a new layer as well. This isn't just a cool weapon for combat, it has a massive stealth perk where you can chain up to 3 more assassinations in quick succession, hopping between enemies. Eagle Vision is also now the sole focus for detection, removing the pet bird from the RPG trilogy and returning to something closer to the classic games. Enemies are highlighted red, non-hostiles in orange, and objects or points of interest stand out clearly, helping Shadows have a more grounded approach to stealth. The missions themselves are also designed around it. You'll infiltrate huge areas, castles with multiple routes, interiors that actually support stealth gameplay, and there are lots of opportunities to improvise. And there is a genuine emphasis on actually needing to use stealth. If you're playing as Naoi, you can't brute force your way through encounters, you'll likely get overwhelmed and killed. In the other 3 RPGs, stealth often felt like an optional extra, but here it's a core part of Naoi's gameplay. She's much weaker than Yasuke, and it makes switching between the 2 characters feel meaningful dependent on the situation. Honestly, Shadows isn't just the best stealth system out of the AC RPGs, it's one of the best stealth systems in the entire series. Between the light and sound mechanics, the new movement options, the tool set, the environmental design, and the mission structure, you actually have to play stealthily. It's deliberate, layered, and it might just be the best part of the whole game. Now, like before, I'm not really going to be mentioning Yasuke here. He essentially can't parkour at all. He can climb slowly, make small jumps, and that's basically it. So this section is all about Naoi, and she's easily the quickest and most lightweight assassin we've ever had. Not only can she move from ledge to ledge with immense speed, but she'll do it in style too, constantly flipping her way from building to building. Sure, it is overkill and it doesn't change the mechanics, but it looks fantastic and absolutely sells that assassin fantasy. She can even manually flip whilst running, which whilst not overly useful, is something we've never had in an AC game before. And mechanically, Naoi actually has some proper parkour abilities. We can back inside eject, something none of the other AC RPG protagonists can do, and these have been improved since launch, so they're not something you'll use occasionally, they're a mechanic you can basically use non-stop. A few months ago, Shadows was also graced with a brand new manual jump, something we hadn't seen in years. This is truly a welcomed addition, giving you way more choice in how you tackle the world. But we also have the big new addition of a grappling hook. This isn't traditional parkour, but it adds a whole new layer of mobility. You can get some really satisfying swings going between buildings or trees, and its main function, letting you scale structures faster, is definitely useful, making a traversal feel truly unique. Plus, Shadows actually has some decent parkour challenges. There aren't loads of them, but when you do stumble across these, known as paths, they're genuinely fun and make great use of the grappling hook's full capability. However, whilst that all sounds pretty great, we don't really have much to work with in terms of the world. Most buildings tend to be the same sort of height, so you're mostly jumping from one rooftop to the next, and whilst there are some small sections like the parkour paths, mostly the opportunities just aren't there. And realistically, would 16th century Japan have poles, beams and perfectly placed ledges for you to do parkour spectacles across? Probably not, but it's never going to give you the same satisfaction you might have gotten from games like the Ezio trilogy, Unity or even Mirage. But to be honest, I can't blame the game too much for this. Unless you're Dying Light, crafting a massive open world simply means you're not going to get detailed parkour routes everywhere, and that's okay. Even with those constraints, Shadows is still miles better than its RPG counterparts, and with the post-launch parkour updates, it takes things to another level. Before we end though, if you've ever heard of the YouTuber Ropotopolous, who's kindly letting me use his footage, he's someone who can create insane Shadows parkour moments, so it can be done, it's just not as effortless as the earlier titles. So before we conclude, there is still a bunch of elements that I haven't covered yet, and the first one is the mission design itself. Shadows isn't a set-piece heavy AC game. You're not going to be getting huge cinematic sequences like we have in previous titles, and honestly, that's fine, because the missions here are built around the core gameplay. For Naoi, that usually means stealth-focused infiltrations. There are a handful of black box missions, but also tons of castles and large areas for her to use everything her stealth has to offer. This is largely assassinating people, but it could also be searching for items or gathering intel. And for Yasuke, missions lean more into combat sequences, letting you smash through groups of enemies in a more structured way than the standard encounters. This is a strength of the game. It will tease you with something like, one of us needs to sneak into the castle, and you can pick who to play as, obviously Naoi in that situation being the more suitable choice. I've already mentioned the difficult boss battles, but outside that, that is kind of it, and that's actually a good thing. Shadows gives you open-ended mission spaces that show off the game. Stealth, combat, parkour, tools, infiltration. The fun comes from how you choose to tackle each objective, not from scripted sequences. It's not flashy, but it's consistent, replayable, and built around what the game actually does well. Another aspect that deserves a mention is the ally system. Throughout the game, you have specific side missions where you can win people over to your cause, and then obtain them as abilities you can use in stealth or combat. They have different strengths, Genajo for stealth and smoke bombs, Katsumi as range support, Yaya for pushing enemies back. They can be useful, and they'll also all be romantic options for you in the game too, if that's your sort of thing. I need to quickly cover the hideout system too. Whilst we've had hideouts in multiple Assassin's Creed games before, it's never been quite like this. Rather than just upgrading preset buildings, in Shadows you can design the space yourself, making it as in-depth or as rustic as you'd like, collecting more pieces throughout Japan. Whilst personally it's not something I spent much time on, some people will absolutely love spending hours getting their little home just right. I also have to mention the outfits and the weapon design too. Not only are there tons of different options, most of them realistic, some more extravagant or pop culture inspired, but the level of detail and accuracy is insane. I was lucky enough to be invited to the Shadows 1-year celebration event at the British Museum, and it was awesome to hear from the art director about how much research went into every aspect of the game. I haven't yet touched on performance, but genuinely everything runs pretty smoothly. I have a very mid-spec PC, and whilst I don't have every setting on Ultra, I've never experienced frame rate issues or screen tearing. Bug-wise, this is a different story. Whilst a year on, the game has had lots of updates and fixes, I did run into a few minor glitches. There was a floating statue, some weird horse riding, and at one stage NPCs not moving. It wasn't flawless, but it was nothing game-breaking by any means. And finally, the music, something Assassin's Creed always nails, is no different here. The tone fits the setting perfectly, adapting to what you're doing. Syncing across a viewpoint triggers something epic and ethereal, combat brings faster paced modern beats, it all aids the world and setting so much. There's even a Shadows version of Ezio's family. To really sum it all up, Shadows is, in my opinion, one of the strongest Assassin's Creed games ever, and definitely the best of the RPG ACs. The story isn't great overall, but the prologue is excellent, the world and setting are amazing, detailed, rich and fun to explore without holding your hand. The combat is easily the best system in the entire series, the stealth is some of the best the series has ever had, and the parkour is as decent as you could hope given the restrictions of the world. With Naoe and Yasuke, this isn't going to be for everyone. Naoe is essentially the assassin for older fans, stealthy, quick and excellent at parkour, whereas Yasuke is for the newer RPG fans, a beast at combat. Personally, I enjoy playing as both, but I do wonder what the game might have been like had they focused on a single protagonist with more assassin traits. I can see what they've tried to do, please both sides of the fanbase, but by doing so it shows how divided the audience is and where the series is now. I do however genuinely think, and this is a trend for all Assassin's Creed games, that as time goes on this game will become more respected. Plus, with all of the updates over the past year, a free DLC, extra content, new weapons, abilities, parkour upgrades and everything else still to come, I can quietly say that yeah, this game is kind of reborn, it's just a shame that it took a year to get here. And hey, if you wanted to know where Shadows landed in my entire AC ranking, that video is on screen now. If you liked the video, a like, a hype and hitting that subscribe button would be awesome, and I will hopefully catch you legends in the next one. Until then.